Hey guys, this is Zach with 8020 Media, back today with another Common Problems video. And today we are going to be discussing the BMW N54 3-liter twin turbocharged inline-6 engine. I tried filming this a couple days ago. We actually we own a few N54s, and those of you somewhat familiar with the engine know that it's a little bit of a reliability nightmare. So on the first attempt at filming, I droned on a little too much because there are so many common problems to discuss with the N54. But we'll circle back to that in a minute with the bulk of the video and common problems. But looking at the basics for the N54, again, it's a 3-liter inline-6 twin turbocharged engine. At the time of its introduction in 2007, it was a new direction for BMW. It was the first time they had mass-produced a turbocharged, direct-injected gasoline engine with variable valve timing, or VANOS as BMW refers to it. So a bit of a new direction for BMW, and of course, anytime a company makes a major change like that, means there's going to be a few kinks to work out. Unfortunately for the N54, it's a little more than a few. But anyway, the N54 is an open deck aluminum block engine with a 10.2:1 compression ratio. It delivers 300 horsepower and 300 pound-feet of torque, and is best known for its use in the 2007 to 2010 335i, along with the 08 to 2010 135 and 535i models. It did, however, continue a little bit beyond 2010 in models like the 335IS and the 2011 BMW 1M, and it also remained in 35i Z4 models through 2016. So despite some reliability concerns with the engine, it did remain around for quite a bit after its initial kind of 2007 to 2010 run, which was when the bulk of these engines were produced. Anyone familiar with the N54 does know that they are pretty stout engines internally and are very mod-friendly and tune-friendly. So it's certainly easy to make a lot of power with the N54. It just comes with the trade-off of being an unreliable engine. So looking at generally what the N54 does very well, the internals are stout. Unless you're pushing past 500-600 wheel horsepower, it's very rare to run into any internal engine issues. So rods, pistons, ringlands, crankshaft, rod bearings, you name it. Any rotating assembly in the engine is generally pretty stout. The block really doesn't have any issues, no cracking issues, no issues there. Again, unless you're trying to push, it is an open deck aluminum block, so that is a drawback if you want to push huge power, but the block doesn't become a concern until generally at least 700-800 wheel horsepower. So not a major concern there. The cylinder head, also very stout. There aren't really any issues inside of the cylinder head, so that includes all valve train, any lifters, camshafts, so on and so forth. They're generally pretty stout, nearly bulletproof. Issues can and do happen sometimes, but they're nothing more than kind of fluky one-off issues. But looking at the N54 as a whole, really anything with the cylinder head, the rotating assembly, the block, all very solid. The timing chain is another thing, another item on the N54 that rarely sees any issues. Again, all this stuff can and occasionally does run into its share of issues, but it's very limited and not something to consider a common problem by any means, and ultimately should not be a concern with the N54. Otherwise, the high-pressure fuel pumps, the modern ones at least, the newest kind of updated versions, aren't very problematic. All of our N54s, all three of them are still on fuel pumps, high pressure fuel pumps from at least 8 to 10 years ago. So BMW really had issues with those high pressure fuel pumps in the first roughly 5 years after the release of the N54. I think it was around 2012 when they finally found an effective solution. Now, high pressure fuel pumps do still fail sometimes, but it's not a common issue nowadays. And even on one of our N54s that's still on a 10-plus-year-old high-pressure fuel pump, it's been running 400 to 600 wheel horsepower for the last 8 years. and has run E85 pretty consistently for a while, just smaller blends, but now it's on 100% E85 and the fuel pump has shown no issues. So I know that's a small example, but again, some people run into high pressure fuel pump issues still, but not something that pops up nearly as frequently as it did back in the day. Same thing with fuel injectors. BMW finally stopped on the Index 12 fuel injectors. And those ones are very solid, don't have any issues. That's what we have on the 335i that we have running full E85. Those injectors are about 8 years old on the car now. Not a single hiccup or issue along the way since they got updated to the Index 12. The only downside is moving to the Index 12 injectors. They are over $1,500 for the set. I think they were a little cheaper back when I got them for my N54. But they are expensive for the set of fuel injectors, so if it has older injectors, anything that isn't 11 or 12, they can still be problematic, and if you want to replace them with kind of the effective long-term solution, which is those newer Index 11 or 12, you're looking at a pretty big upfront cost there. The turbochargers are another problem, another fairly frequent issue that people run into with the N54. Now, part of that likely is due to the fact that so many of these cars at this point have been tuned and modded and running, more than double the factory boost for quite some time. But the wastegate rattle and other issues with the turbos can still be annoying and frustrating, and with the age of these cars, if it's on original turbos or 10-plus-year-old turbochargers, those will probably come up for replacement at some point. Obviously a big expense there, but that is a great opportunity to upgrade the turbos if those do become problematic. Of course, upgraded turbos, depending on which route you go, can range anywhere from $1,000 to about $3,000 for twin turbos. If you can't install them on your own, you'll probably shell out about $1,000 or $1,500 for install on those, so pretty big job there. If you want to convert to a single turbo, then that can run pretty easily over $5,000. Otherwise, the N54 has quite a few issues with the cooling system. Everything from the expansion tank to the water pump, the electric cooling fan, and coolant hoses. Essentially, the entire cooling system has pretty frequent issues. It's rare for the water pumps to make it much past 100,000 miles. Coolant expansion tanks frequently crack around that mileage. A few hoses start to fail here and there, and the electric cooling fan is generally another item that gives out around 100,000 miles. So quite a few issues with the N54 cooling system. There are also a number of very common oil leaks that even when you fix them, they can pop up pretty quickly after they're fixed. Three most common ones are the valve cover / valve cover gasket, the oil filter housing / oil filter housing gasket, and the oil pan gasket. Now keep in mind, most of these engines at this point are 12 to 15 years old, unless you have a newer Z4. But otherwise, most of these engines are pretty old, so pretty much any oil leak, any seals, O-rings, gaskets going bad is fair game. Fortunately, the front and rear main seals aren't common points for oil leaks on the N54, but again, with the age and mileage most of them are at now, pretty much anything is fair game. Outside of all of that, the N54 is known to have pretty severe issues with carbon buildup due to the direct injection, and that's something that carbon buildup affects pretty much any direct injection engine, assuming it's direct injection only and doesn't also have port injection on the side of that. But there's always some natural kind of oil blow-by that eventually sticks to the intake valves, and part of that comes down to the PCV system and just how you handle that oil blow-by in general, but the N54 doesn't do it very well. Carbon buildup tends to become an issue every 60 to 80,000 miles, at which point you should walnut blast the engine to clean out any of that buildup. That's about $400 to $600. And if you could DIY it, it's fairly straightforward. You just need kind of a heavy-duty shop vac along with some walnut media shells, and that will get the job done. It's mostly labor once you have the equipment to do it. But if you take it to a shop, you're looking at about $400 to $600 for that, and it doesn't have to be done that frequently. Plenty of N54s go 100,000 plus miles without walnut blasting, but if you want the car to kind of perform at its peak and idle smooth and all of that, then it's good maintenance every, again, 60 to 80,000 miles. Another common issue that's not directly tied to the engine, but is obviously related to the engine, is the DME, as BMW refers to it, or the ECU, or PCMs. Others may know of the ECU. The MSD80 on earlier N54s, the MOSFETs are known to be problematic, and that could be a headache. There are ways around it, but a lot of people just opt to upgrade to a newer ECU. So that could be a little bit pricey. Out of the 3 N54s that we own, we haven't run into that issue yet, but it is still a fairly common problem, and quite a few of the earlier models, 07s and 08s, do run into that DME problem. The list, I'll summarize these next few because the list could honestly go on and on. Whether or not it's fair to classify these as common problems or more so just age and mileage related maintenance could be up for debate. But a couple other things with the N54 to consider are things like the O2 sensors, boost solenoids, Vanos solenoids, any vacuum lines, potential vacuum leaks. Those can all be problematic areas on the N54. I'm sure I'm kind of missing a few here, but again, really the best way to look at the N54 is anything inside the engine, anything inside the cylinder head is generally very reliable. Anything outside of the engine itself, outside of the rotating assembly, the block, the cylinder head, is known to be problematic. And so, again, that goes back to, we've covered pretty much everything here between the water pump, cooling fans, coolant hoses, gaskets, seals, stuff like that can leak, carbon buildup, fuel injectors, turbos. It's all the stuff around the engine that can be problematic and make the N54 a pretty big headache to own if you're not comfortable DIYing things and knocking out stuff that has some overlap in labor, even if it's not a problem at the time. That's something that I always recommend with the N54 is, if you're in the area and something is fairly inexpensive to replace, it's probably best to just go ahead and replace that. So anytime you're doing any work or maintenance or repairs on the engine, if you're right in the area of, vacuum lines, inexpensive coolant hoses, gaskets, so on and so forth, just go ahead and knock those out and replace those if you can. All of that said, if you're willing to keep up with that maintenance, the N54 internally really doesn't have any issues making it well beyond 200,000 miles. There are even examples of them above that mileage making nearly double the stock output with totally unopened engines. It's just by the time you make it to 200,000 plus miles, you've probably replaced multiple water pumps, multiple valve cover gaskets, multiple coolant hoses, maybe 1 or 2 coolant expansion tanks, 1 or 2 cooling fans. So the list goes on and on. They become fairly expensive to maintain. Well, they already are expensive to maintain, but as they continue aging, that kind of opens up the door for more and more age-related issues, stuff that isn't really a common problem, but things that probably will go wrong as these engines get older. So ultimately, as I kind of touched on earlier, the N54 isn't a great engine for everyone. We own a number of them because we do kind of some of our own maintenance on them, especially now that we have a garage and a car lift and kind of a better workspace to do that. It makes it easy to knock out certain jobs and take care of overlapping labor items. That said, if you're comfortable DIYing and could do some kind of more complex jobs, the N54 can be a great value. I mean, you could pick these things up for less than $10,000 nowadays. I would recommend putting aside the first $3,000 or $4,000 of your budget towards preventative maintenance, potential issues and repairs. I would set aside that money before buying an N54 and just saying, oh, hey, I'm going to throw, $3,000 in bolt-on mods on the car, which I know can be tempting because they do make respectable power with very simple mods, and so it's tempting just to buy the car and throw your money into mods. But set some aside to invest in preventative maintenance, knock out any repairs that the previous owner might not have taken care of. But ultimately, the N54 really is still a great value, and in the near future, we'll have a video coming about N54 mods, turbo upgrades, tuning, so on and so forth, which is kind of the silver lining with the N54. It does a lot of things very well, and we love the N54 for many different reasons, but reliability certainly is not towards the top of that list. That said, thanks for tuning in today. If you guys like the video, then please hit that like button, smash the subscribe button, and as always, we've written quite a few articles on the BMW N54, so make sure you check out the description below and read a few of the articles if you're looking for more information on the N54.